Welcome to Afi Reverie Bra Sew Along video tutorial. This is part 7. Today we're working on the bridge area, and finally, we're adding the left and right side of the bra that we have constructed in the previous episode. But for the moment, put the left and right sections aside. Pick up your bridge and neckline pieces. 1A2 lining, 1A2 main fabric, left A1 neckline stripe, and right A1 neckline piece. We will start with taking care of the neckline edge on the A1 pieces. We'll be adding a thin picot elastic directly on our sewing machine. With the right side of the fabric up, bring the elastic. Align the picots towards the fabric, not the edge. Start stitching using the zigzag stitch. Guide the plain edge of the elastic to the edge of the fabric. Help your machine feed the fabric by holding and very slightly pulling the threads at the back. On straight segments, very slightly pull the elastic. Make sure the stitch is closer to the picots and not the plain edge of the elastic. But note, you must not run over the picots. Just very close. On the back of our work, we need to get rid of the excess fabric. We want a clean finish here. Pick up small scissors and very carefully start trimming the fabric only. Have patience. I am speeding up not to bore you. With the excess out of the way, we can now fold the elastic. And on the right side we're gonna get the scallops peeking only. The stitch here will follow the plain edge of the elastic. Arrange your work under the presser foot. Here you can use either the simple or the 3-step zigzag. And look how beautiful it is on the right side with those pretty picots. Next we'll be joining these to the bridge pieces. The neckline stripes will be enclosed between the lining and the top bridge layer. All pieces here are with their right sides up. Put aside the lining for the moment. Take the left neckline piece and flip it vertically. Now we need to align along that very short edge. One pin here will do. Now pick the second neckline and flip that too. Align this one to the other half of the upper edge. And again, pin temporarily. Observe how the neckline pieces overlap. Now pick the bridge lining and cover the sandwich, again carefully aligning the edges. This time we need to pin all the layers. And here we're reusing the pins and adding a couple more. You have probably realized by now that this is not a straight edge. Our stitch will follow the edge precisely and turn the corner in the middle of the seam. I apologize for the blurred footage. The camera decided to focus somewhere else. Use the straight stitch, just as I told you, and everything will be fine. Remember to stop and slightly turn your work halfway your seam. And you should have something like this. Now we need to reduce the bulk. Trim the elastic ends. Alright, and now look, I am folding the bridge in half to reveal the corner on the seam. Trim this, but be careful only to trim the seam allowances, and not to cut the stitch. We need to get this little gap. Next, flip the lining, then the neckline stripes, and hide the seam allowances inside. And look why the gap was needed. The seam allowances will now arrange nicely inside. The layers aren't so bulky anymore. Use your fingers to glide the seam. Now we want to top stitch the seam to stabilize it completely. Using the straight stitch, follow the previous seam. And look how flat and clean it is. To stabilize the lining to the front layer, either hand-based or simply pin like I am doing here. And stitch this along the left and right sides, and at the bottom. This way, the fabrics won't run all over when we'll be adding the bra sides. And speaking of them, it's time you bring the left section of the bra. Arrange everything with the right side up. Now flip the bridge section and place it on top. Start aligning the edge from the bottom side of the bridge. Use a couple of pins here. Then move to the other end. See, we've got a sticking corner here. Add pins and move on to pinning the entire seam. This shouldn't be too complicated. The stitch will follow the edge exactly. If your fabrics stretch, use the elastic stitch. If none of your fabrics stretch, use the straight stitch. One side done. Move on and add the second side. And your bra is now one piece. We still need to work on this seam. On the back of your work, trim the sticking corners. Now look! Open the seam allowances and select the cup and cradle seam allowance. Leave the bridge seam allowance as it is. Carefully trim the one that comes from the cup and the cradle. Take your time and do not rush. Be extra careful. And look how the longer seam allowance will cover the shorter one. That was on one side of the bridge. We need to repeat this for the other bridge seam. Trim the cup and cradle seam allowance only. When done, direct each seam allowance towards the cup and the cradle. Arrange your work under the presser foot with the right side up. Using the 3-step zigzag, you need to catch the seam allowance underneath. While sewing, stop often, and using your both hands, spread the cup and the bridge to avoid puckering. Also, watch for the lace scallops. You might want the stitch to catch them where the lace is high enough. And look how flat it turned out to be on the right side of the bra. At the back, the seam allowances are trapped by the zigzag stitch, and they won't bother us when wearing the bra. Next time we're adding elastics. Cheers! We're very close to finishing the bra.